So it's Monday. Welcome to the last day of the month of May 2021. And this is our final edition of the show, Frontier Opening Bell, for the month May 2021, actually. I'm Temple Ashaju. Let's look at the markets numbers, weekly status, and a couple of last trading sessions for some of them, where we've got the Nigerian Stock Exchange down by 0.18% on a week-to-date basis. The BRVM Stock Exchange Friday specifically was down, lowered by some 48 basis points. The Egyptian Stock Exchange was positive 58 basis points. That was yesterday, Sunday, when it actually still traded. Nairobi Stock Exchange jumped. That was a huge one, 4.18% on a week-to-date basis. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange almost touching the 1%, but it was just 92 basis points appreciation as at Thursday. East African markets headlines now, where you have foreign banks volume of business in Kenya dipping to $3.42 billion. That's for 2020 compared to 2019. There's a margin there. Kenya's central bank accepts 20.58 billion shillings in weekly TBS auction. Stanchart Kenya is to upgrade its ATMs to accept check deposits. Housing Finance reports loss of 191.8 million shillings in the first quarter of 2021. In Ethiopia, IFAD EU to inject 26.5 million euros debt relief in rural financial institutions. Merge Exchange lists Princeton 300B East Windsor NJ Limited on its main board. Ali, welcome to a beautiful week. Let's start with getting some analysis about all of these headlines from you and possibly give us the backstory to that surge of 4.18 week-to-date gains in Kenya, the markets.
Yes, thank you, Temple. Let me start with that surge at the NSE. Just to show you, the NSE, 62% of the NSE is about Safaricom. Then the large balance is the bank stocks. So it's really a telecom and banking index, if you think about it, with the telecom side outweighing all the rest. So this reaction at the beginning of the week, there was a surge in Safaricom's price on the news that Safaricom's license application had gone through in Ethiopia. As I said earlier in the week, I thought it was a bit of a sugar high. Market was overreacting to the upside. I think, everyone looked at the market opportunity, 110 million. But, there have been significant developments with regard to Ethiopia. The Americans, for example, have sanctioned a number of officials. They are now trying to persuade the World Bank and the IMF and other multilaterals to soft pedal on loans to Ethiopia unless they are humanitarian. So we've got quite a volatile picture, but I think shareholders essentially are looking at the big opportunity. It's a blue sky opportunity. The challenge for Safaricom is how quickly they'll get the mobile money license, because that's going to be a key part of their profitability. So we had that Safaricom surge taking the market up, and then we had very positive banking stocks, particularly Equity Bank, pushing the market higher as well. Equity Bank is the biggest bank by assets since the acquisitions in Congo. Dr. Mwangi reported first quarter results way ahead of expectations and painted a very bright picture. They skipped the dividend last year, but essentially investors are looking through that. So really a story of telecom and banks driving the Nairobi Stock Exchange higher. I think the telco rally has run out of steam. I think the banks have probably got more to go. But you've got to stock pick, and for example, Equity, ABSA, Standard Chartered, for various reasons, look very attractively priced to me. Foreign banks, volume of business in Kenya dipping. Look, this has been a trend actually for quite a long time. I take you back to the late 90s when a lot of the foreign banks, the likes of Barclays, etc., retreated from the rural areas, saying it was too expensive to deliver banking services, cost of the branch, etc. And we had the likes of Equity Bank, which was then a very small building society, step into the breach and basically look to bank all these folks. And then we've moved over time to the digitization trend. It's become much cheaper to reach people off the phone. And essentially our domestic indigenous banks are really dominating the scene. And that trend started about 20 years ago and has accelerated in the last few years as well. Kenya Central Bank accepting 20 billion shillings of T-bills, a lot of liquidity in the T-bill market, quite well priced. 1-year T-bills have got a 9 handle. Banks are pretty keen on that for now. Okay, we've had a little bit of an inflation push higher, but I don't see the central bank moving off 7% for a while. Standard Chartered, tough year last year for them. Share price looks pretty reasonable. But essentially closing down branches, moving forward with the digitization program. They've got a very interesting mobile application, and now they've been authorized to make mobile phone-based loans. So you can see they're also targeting the mass market there. Housing finance loss. Look, it's been a tough time for housing finance for quite a few years. Private equity has moved into Britam. Britam is the main shareholder in housing finance. We should see some corporate activity. I think it's up for sale. Ethiopia, IFAD EU to inject 26.5 million euros debt relief. The real story in Ethiopia is how they burnt the bridges with the US and with the European partners. And the question is, how bad is that squeeze going to turn out? This weekend, we had some protests in the capital of Addis. This was really, I mean, I don't know what to call it, but basically the government busted a bunch of people, gave them photographs of Putin and Xi Jinping. I mean, this is a comedy in terms of how to conduct foreign relations. It's really quite shocking. And it's even more alarming. I've been reading some of the language that's coming out of the Ethiopian government. I mean, these guys have got to get serious and they've got to deal with the situation and with their partners as required. They can't keep spinning this ridiculous PR story. There's a genocide going on. Everyone can see it. It's leaking out left, right, and center. There's no way you can spin it any differently. And I think that's a very big risk right now in the Horn of Africa.
And added to that is the heavy weight of famine in those regions at this point as well. Thanks a great deal, Ali. Bosun, any quick additions there? I think your audio is muted, Bosun.
Sorry, my apologies. I was talking about the OECD story, and I just came in within the last hour. The Organization of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that's the OECD, released its global forecast for 2021 raised it to 5.8% from 5.6% previous. That's just what is breaking right now. Thank you so much.
All right, and Bosun, I appreciate that notice. Thanks a great deal. Western African markets, and of course that of Nigeria at the moment, where Ghana's Monetary Policy Committee meeting is expected to hold at 11 a.m. today. FMDQ platform admits 200 million naira of Trust Bank Holdings Limited commercial paper. Honeywell Flowers profit rises 73% to 1.12 billion naira in the first half of 2021. In Cote d'Ivoire, Bank Atlantic declares 26 billion CFA franc profit for 2020 financial year. Morocco's Amin El Kanegi is the new chief executive officer of Alliance Senegal. The Democratic Republic of Congo is to receive some $1.5 billion IMF package to fund the 3-year program. Chima Okadeke, I know that at Vetiver Capital Management, you cover the Ghanaian markets amply. Can you talk us through basically some kind of an outlook that you have on the markets, knowing that the MPESA is holding this morning?
Thank you, Temple. So for the Ghanaian MPESA meeting that we're expecting today, what we know is that the committee has held the monetary policy rate constant for 6 consecutive sessions, and the reason has been that although inflation had been rising at that time, they were expecting that by Q2 where we are now, we should see inflation dropping. They should see inflation dropping to within the acceptable range that the bank, has its target, which is about 6 to 10%. So according to the inflation numbers for April, we can see that number has dropped significantly from about 13.5% to, I think, 8.3 or 8.5%, if I'm not mistaken. So that is well within the range that the bank has been targeting, which is very positive for the country. And if you compare that to their rates, comparing 8.5% to the 14.5%, that is the MPR rate. When you look at your inflation adjusted returns, investors should be happy about that, because it's a lot more than we can see for Nigeria currently at the moment, with inflation around 18% levels and our rates around 11.5 and thereabouts. So for the outlook for the MPC meeting, what I think will happen, we have been seeing a lot of countries favor an expansionary policy stance. And so I think that given where inflation stands currently and the bank's initial decision to hold even when inflation was trending upwards, now that they're at a favorable position, we may see them reduce rates a bit. We may see them reduce rates favorably because they're trying to favor an expansionary stance. But it remains to be seen what the bank or what the committee will decide. And of course, we'll be able to get their reasons. But for us, I think that we'll be seeing the bank reduce rates, maybe slightly, but and it will just be due to the inflationary pressures reducing. So I can also talk about the Honeywell flour profit. Yeah. We can see that their profit rose 73%. Overall, I think it was a very, impressive result, or good results. If you look at their performance from top line to bottom line, we saw that revenue increased by about, I think, 36%, if I'm also not mistaken, and we saw that profit also increased by 73% year on year. So looking at the past year for many of these companies, Honeywell Flour Mill was a flour company, and we can see that for many other flour companies like flour mills, for example, we saw that 2020 was a very profitable year for them. Even with the pandemic, we saw them, recognizing increased revenues and profits due to the closure of the borders, which limited the influx of imported flour and flour products. So that has, helped the company in that period, and the outlook still remains strong for the company, given that we should see demand remain strong for flour and flour-related products. However, one problem or one challenge that the company has faced in recent times is in relation to its debt. We know that the company, I think, has taken borrowings from some banks, and some of them include First Bank of Nigeria. And around, I think, April, the CBN gave it an ultimatum, I think it's 48-hour ultimatum to, refinance its debt or to repay the loan. So the company has been out in the market looking for, a way to refinance, probably through commercial papers, or most likely through commercial papers. So that is one thing we see in the company's future. It will definitely get a commercial paper or a bond, depending on its strategy, long-term or short-term, to refinance this debt. And for investors, what they'll be looking at will be the company's cash flows, which I think has gotten stronger. If you look at cash flow from operations, it has increased from 5 billion to 12 billion, according to the recently released FY21 results. And so that's, although it may not be enough to support the current about 31 billion current loans that the company has at the moment, we think that they can spread out their offerings, and they should be able to, work out a program that can sufficiently cover this loan. One other disadvantage that we see probably is the timing of this commercial paper issuance. If it had come into the market last year, then all well and good, very favorable because rates were very low. But now rates are on the rise. I doubt you can get away with a low rate offering at this time. Investors will really be looking for higher rates at the moment. So that's the only negative we see. We see that it might affect its finance costs in the year. I think that's it for the Nigerian or West African markets from me.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thanks a great deal. Bosin, we know that there's been a shortage of COVID-19 vaccines across major parts of Africa. Do you expect that to impact the decision of the MPESA in Ghana today?
I don't really think that much. If you look at the news you're getting about the pandemic, the virus and the vaccine is coming more from South Africa. President Ramaphosa is starting it all up here. The business liquidation stories coming out of South Africa has reached about 55% in terms of liquidations coming through from last year, small, medium-sized businesses, according to reports we got late last week. So South Africa is where the epicenter is, in a manner of speaking. The Ghanaians are moving forward in terms of economic positioning for themselves for the intra-Africa trade, in terms of startups as well, and all of that. So I think the monetary policy will focus a little bit more in Ghana on balancing its fiscal position, as it were, and then try to manage also the relationship with external multilateral agencies such as the World Bank and the IMF. Well, but on a final note, to speak to the DRC, Congo DRC getting $1.5 billion from the IMF. I think that's one big story. After about 9 years of hiatus, they're now coming back to the IMF and getting the 1.5 billion. I think it's some good money on the table that the DRC should use very well. You know, the whole Equity Bank, Nigeria's Access Bank in Congo DRC, it looks like the Congo DRC is beginning to turn itself around. Like I always say here on the show, keep one eye on your neighbors.
Many thanks, Bosun. Southern African headlines, where South Africa's breweries Zenzele Kabili lists on the empowerment segment of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Visual International Holdings plans to buy Agility South Africa via share for share. African equities revenue is down by 27.44%. Growth Point Properties makes cash offer to buy Global Wealth Limited. Saudi's ACWA Power is eyeing South Africa's next green electricity auction. Ali, let's bring these headlines to you for quick understanding.
Yes, can I just quickly add to what Bosun was saying about DR Congo and second what he was saying? I mean, clearly, President Tshisekedi is a man to watch because, you know, the IMF writing a ticket for 1.5 billion is significant. Not only that, we've seen his ability to triangulate the existing players, which are in some ways Uganda and Rwanda. He's widened it out. He's gotten you guys excited. He's got Kenya very interested. He's talking about joining the EAC. So definitely, from my point of view, he is a man to watch. And I think, you know, Congo has a lot of potential. We tend to always look at the commodities, cobalt and copper, but we don't look at the population because remember, it's all divisible by the number of citizens you have. And a country like Botswana is infinitely richer, notwithstanding it's got less resources than somewhere like DR Congo because of the population. But he's a man to watch, I've got to say.
I agree with you, Ali. If your tempo allows me to very quickly touch on the Congo DRC has spent the last 2 years devoting the bigger chunk of his annual budget to agriculture. So like Ali says, folks, we tend to just think about Congo, about copper and other things. Look, they're turning the corner. The President Tshisekedi is really turning the corner. They're doing 60, almost 70% of annual budget now into agriculture and agro-allies.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so definitely, I agree with Bosun on that. Just quickly go to your South African headlines. Let me start with number 3, African equity revenues down 27.44%. And I think basically, if you look at that sort of business, it's been a tough year last year. You had to make more investments rather than harvest. So I think, you know, you'll see that trend in a number of cases. I mean, the key issue for me in South Africa really is this third wave. You know, how bad will it be? Ramaphosa yesterday spoke to the nation. He's he's like tinkered with the restrictions, but really it will depend on whether it transpires to be worse or less worse than the previous two waves. Northern Cape at the moment, for example, is worse than in the previous two waves. Gauteng province is being badly affected. That's the engine of South Africa. That's where Johannesburg is. So a lot will depend on that. And remember, last year really knocked the economy for six.
Thank you very much. Thanks a great deal, Ali. Let's move to the northern part of Africa. Of course, you have Sudan saying it is ready and open for business. Egypt's central bank issues treasury bills worth 18.5 billion Egyptian pounds. United Media Services is to list 20 to 30% stake on the Egyptian stock exchange by 2024. CFG Bank's NBI rises by 93% to 74 million dirhams in the first quarter of the year 2020-2021. Salafin Group is to pay 162.5 million dirhams dividends to shareholders. Overall incorporated of listed Tunisian banks rose to 1.29 billion dinars in the first quarter of the year. Your thoughts first, Ali, and then Bosin, and possibly addition from Chima.
So let me just go with the Sudan story. I mean, that they're open for business. I saw a number of very interesting headlines over the weekend. The French finance minister said, we're taking care of the debt problem in Sudan. It's now time for businesses to go into Sudan. So I think there's a very big commitment by international stakeholders to ease this debt overhang from the Bashir regime. And look, there are complexities there right now, you know, triple-digit inflation, a lot of problems in some areas of Sudan where people are protesting. But to me, there is a tremendous amount of potential. And I think the big difference between countries with or without potential in Africa is this one has got a significant tailwind of support behind it. It's seen as a pivot state. You've got people working behind the scenes. We've seen the results already of everyone working in a joined up and coherent manner. And therefore, I think, you know, Sudan, as much as the Congo, is another country to watch. A lot of potential. Agriculture is huge. The Gulf is looking for food security. A lot of land in Sudan, the Nile, and you know, a sophisticated, reasonably well-educated citizenry. We saw that in 2019 when they deposed Bashir. Very articulate, and I'm really bullish. I think, you know, Dangote was saying he's going to have a look. I think, you know, all of us Africans should have a good look at Khartoum. A lot of potential there.
Thank you very much, Ali. Chima, any contributions?
Yes. So much like Ali said, I think Sudan is a country to really watch out for. We can see it started from when they were removed from being designated as a terrorist nation or terrorist supporting country by the US, which you know, had limited foreign investments from being interested or being, you know, safe or secure in that environment. So with that, we should, you know, start to see, with that and other reforms that are being put in place as requirements, we should start to see investor confidence return to that country. Also, something I see that has really struck me is how a lot of international bodies and countries have, you know, come to the rescue of Sudan, starting with members of the Paris Club, with France trying to help it bridge its IMF loan, with other countries trying to help them clear their overhanging debt. And, you know, with a lot of countries or a lot of international stakeholders trying to help them with many projects, building roads, and, you know, building refineries if possible, you know, as they are trying to acquire funds for. So I think it's something that we can watch out for, most especially because a lot of people have come to Sudan's aid, and, you know, a lot of investors should be refocusing their energy when we start to see results.
And we do hope that they will be able to get it right, with some level of decorum at this point in time. Thanks a great deal, Chima. Bosun, your final comments. I mean, we know that listed companies in Tunisia are beginning to generate higher income at this point in time. Would you like to...
banks? Yes, okay. the Tunisian banks.
Yes.
The overall income up about $1.29 billion in the first quarter. It looks like that's a bit of a shake-off of the 2020 pandemic period. But I'm interested also in the United Media Services, listing between 20 to 30% stake on the EGX by the year 2024. That looks like a long way from now, but we can wait, by the way. I can't wait. My final point on Sudan is that it's been a very good news so far. The AfDB has also been very supportive of this Sahel economy. I hope and I wish that the global powers would also do the same thing for Zimbabwe and forgive the country some of its debts, perhaps forgive the former president who is late, Robert Mugabe, and tend to forget, so that the sins of Robert Mugabe is not visited on the future generations, the present and future generations of Zimbabwe. So I think this is time to get Zimbabwe back into the global community, as it were, so that the country can also begin to move on. It's been a pariah nation for so long, just like Sudan. I think it is time to welcome them back into the fold as well. Just making a case for Zimbabwe as well.
Africa rising, and we can only rise, actually.
Let's leave no one behind. Leave no one behind.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for gracing the show this morning. Chima Okadeke, our consumer goods analyst with Vetiva Capital Management. Thanks a great deal for your analysis. Ali Kansachu, appreciate your rich analysis always on the program. Thanks a great deal. The Chief Executive Officer of Rich Management Frontiers at Nairobi, Kenya. Thanks a great deal. Bosun Omofai, thanks a great deal for your wonderful analysis and editorial on the show this morning. This has been the last edition of our show for May 2021. I'm Temple Ashaju. I'll see you on the other side, June the 1st tomorrow. Bye for now.